Good morning, everyone. I think in my mom's tradition, which is she's an Episcopal priest, it's still the season of Easter, technically. So happy Easter. It's comforting to know that we can still celebrate that. Jesus roaming around Judea, reconnecting with his disciples and reminding them, these eternal truths. So I'm glad that we can emphasize, do I have pockets? No. I'm glad that we can emphasize the spirit of the law and not so much the letter of the law. Otherwise, you'd have to hear me talk about all the reasons why we shouldn't kill each other and hate our brothers. That's nice. Well, before we dive into the topic, I just wanted to bring some attention to the title, Deeds versus Intentions. And it's particularly significant for me because I'm one of these people, you might relate, where it's really easy to start things, but it's not so easy to finish them. In fact, all my whole life I've had so many great ideas, but then when it comes to actually taking that first step, so many good intentions, it can be kind of difficult. One of these was last fall, somebody approached me saying, the hoop house at the community, the doors are rotting off. Maybe we could replace those doors. And this was sometime in October, I think. And, I just finished it yesterday. Before I could sit down and even think about the two words, deeds versus intentions, I've been thinking about this all week, but I kept walking by my house and seeing the door. First week, Stanley and I got the doors on, but then they wouldn't shut because we hadn't put the little things that clasp it together. So I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish this and see what happens. And it's true that when you do get the opportunity to complete something, to make good on an intention that you have, there's an amazing release of energy that comes from that fulfillment of that intention, of that desire. So I think the saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, is really apt because it holds the devotee or the individual accountable. You can have so many good ideas, but if you look back on your life and you haven't done anything with them, you get into a lot of trouble that way. One example of that is, I wasn't present for it, but perhaps Sriman and Padma may have witnessed something like this. Swami Kriyananda, our founder here, was famous for holding true to his word. If he had an intention, he would follow through with it, even in the most trivial respects. And the underlying reason for that in the teachings of India, of yoga philosophy, when one can create harmony between one's intentions and one's actions, an amazing reservoir of energy becomes unlocked. And it's even said that the fulfillment of that practice is that one's words are made manifest in the ether. So that when one's actions and one's thoughts are united, the very thought itself becomes manifest. So Swami was one example of that, which I just love. I think about it all the time. He had the desire to go to town and get a cup of coffee. And that was kind of a treat back in those days, probably still today. Not many cars. And so Swami would get into his car and he was planning to go down to a cafe and probably to share the cup with Divine Mother. And somebody stopped him on the way and said, "Oh, would you like to come to my house and have a cup of coffee?" And we would think, "Oh, desire fulfilled." And Swami said, "Sure." So he stopped by, and then afterwards they said, "Oh, well, where are you going?" He says, "Oh, I'm going into town to get a cup of coffee." And it was just that following it all the way through. It's just incredible to me. It's so beyond what I've been doing in this life, but it really, even just getting that last screw in to the door, I felt, when you start something in thought and when you finish it, you don't realize that there's some sort of kudos that you get, divine favor or a gift from following that trail. So I wanted to talk about that. It's not really the topic, but it's there. It's in the title. Let me see if there was another little piece of that. Well, talking about violence, because this, I couldn't think of not talking about violence, because that's the first example that Jesus gives is, don't kill your brother, don't wish harm to your brother. And And Swami emphasizes that the beginning of that is in the mind, and that it's even more important to focus on the source of that. One example of this is I have a 3-year-old, Ezra, and you already see the beginnings of the ego forming, and it's kind of comical. I mean, we have to remember he's a person too, and we can't laugh at him when he's going through his tantrums, So we have to have compassion, but some of the things, the ego is so rough at that point, just putting itself together. And his first impulse is, I have this desire. And then if there's no fulfillment of it right away, that lack of patience, like we were talking about in the affirmation, he goes immediately to anger. And we do that too in ourselves. We're not as overt as children are, but what this reading is telling us to do is to meditate on that, or at least to be introspective, to be self-aware that we have this same desire, thwarted desire, negative energy that replays in our mind all the time. With Ezra, he's immediately fisticuffs, he's like a brawler. And if we return that energy, not physically, but if verbally, if we say, hey, cut that out, it's the thwarted desire and the anger, and it's being returned with our thwarted desire and our anger, and we just watch it. It's like a great bonfire. It just goes out of control. So we didn't study soon enough before, he's been faster than we have been in being parents. Him growing as a child, us growing as parents. But one of the things that we learned that really pulls on the yoga philosophy is to be able to control the reactive process within yourself. How to do that? You need meditation, for sure. Or at least, as I said, introspection. You have to be able to take a moment and review how you behave in response to other people. For years, actually it's my first and only job, I've been working at East West Bookshop. And and so I was the new guy, and now I'm the only guy, so to speak. But so it was about 8 years ago. I was new at the store, and I guess I would have been 19, something like that. And I was really excited. I was kind of overzealous. And I'm sure there's a word for that in English. There's a word for everything. But so this gentleman, an elderly gentleman, came up to me and was asking for chanting CDs. And I said, oh, great, that's my forte. I'm the CD buyer. I know all about the mantras, etc. So I rush him down to the floor, and I say, look, we have over 100 chanting CDs. Let me tell you the top 3, 4, 5. This one's this way, this one's that way. And let me know if you have any questions. And I'm off. And literally about 15 minutes later, he comes up to the top desk, and he kind of just staggers up. And he just says so frankly to me, I had an intention to come in here and get a CD, and your energy was so restless, it was so scattered, that I forgot even what I was doing here. And I just couldn't believe it, It was clear to me that that's the guru speaking right there. And I was and I was taken aback, and I watched the reactive process that I was just mentioning. But I'm great at my job, I know a lot, maybe it's his problem. He's too slow, whatever. But I didn't say a thing. I just listened to him, and he walked away. I didn't say anything. And I sat there for another 15 minutes just thinking about it. And I just watching, first with some I'm and then slowly with amusement at the ego trying to defend itself. And I'm so happy to say that I came to the realization that he was absolutely right, and that it was a tremendous lesson that I could learn in that moment. And East West was really continues to be actually kind of a crucible for spiritual growth. When you're working with people, either with the public or working in close quarters with friends, with guru bhais, there's a lot of lessons to be had. And I've had similar experiences through the years with other staff members where there's a comment, and maybe 80%, 90% of people might take your side. And they might say, no, that was completely unreasonable of them to say that. You're justified in your behavior and your attitude towards life. And yet, there's this underlying doubt that we have, where maybe what they said, maybe there's something important here for me to do, for me to reflect on. And Swami has a wonderful book that he wrote, mostly for renunciates, but it applies to all of us. It's called Sadhu Beware. And the whole book is really looking at this problem of ego that we have and how to transcend that. And there's just these practical steps. And one of them is to not defend yourself when somebody does criticize you, even if you're justified, and to experiment with that. There's a great freedom in not having to identify. That's basically what it is. It's this case of mistaken identity, where we know there's 7 billion people on the planet, and yet we identify with just one of them, don't we? And it seems to be where all of our problems really come from. I mean, we have to have an ego in this life. Ramakrishna talked about the ego as being like a stick, which you might use to stoke the fire, but eventually you're going to have to let the stick go. You're going to have to, you're going to have to let it burn and become one with all that is. And we really can't get to this higher self without leaving that ego behind. One example, when in this reading, the idea of the sin or negative intentions, we could say, beginning in the mind, Yogananda has a wonderful story of that in his autobiography of a yogi, where he spends time with his guru, Sri Yukteswar, who's just like that customer of mine every single day, that he's, Mukunda, this is what you do wrong. This is what you do wrong, One of my favorites is the case of the mosquito consciousness. I'm sure you guys all, if you've read it, that one would have stuck out to you. So first, Mukunda, Yogananda, is being eaten up by these mosquitoes. And his spiritual ego, he doesn't really have one. He's a liberated master, but he put this out for all of us, is just, I've got to be strong against these mosquitoes. They're biting me up. Oh, look at my guru. He doesn't even care, So his guru throws him a bone, gets him a net, and then he gets to witness Sri Yukteswar. I brought this up just in case I forgot. He gets to witness Sri Yukteswar in a state of samadhi, where his spirit has been withdrawn from the body. And he understands this is really what's being asked of me. And Sri Yukteswar says, to explain that, because that's kind of a, you were too thin, Mukunda. Okay, this is my favorite part. So he's experimenting to see if he really is dead or if he's in this cosmic state, So he puts a mirror under his nose to see if there's any breath. And then finally, he shuts his mouth and plugs his nose. Sri Yukteswar just comes from that state laughing. And he says, "Why don't you go to bed? Is the whole world going to change for you?" And it's, he comes out of this state of samadhi, and he's still completely aware of the underlying lesson here, which is Mukunda's fixation on the mosquitoes. Is the whole world going to change for you? Change yourself. Be rid of the ego, of the mosquito consciousness. Change yourself. So when we think about all of these problems, violence in the world, bigotry, when we think about our desires being thwarted, it all is rooted to this pole of the ego. We're really walking around in circles attached to this one particular identification. Master Paramahansa Yogananda said that the ego is simply the soul identified with the body, which tells us that we have the choice to expand that identification. And how do we do that? Well, there's lots of ways. In this path, we practice Raja Yoga, which is really a wonderful synthesis of other traditional forms of yoga or self-perfection. And in Raja Yoga, we have bhakti for those that that seek their connection with the divine in a personal I and thou relationship, one of devotion. And we have karma yoga for those of us who are restless and need to channel our energies and maybe have a hard time with meditation. And then we have jnana yoga for those who can't relate to this Krishna image or to this Jesus Christ image and simply think of God as the consciousness, as the awareness of being aware. And these are all valid ways of which we can expand from this one little small sense of self into a larger sense of self. When we do become self-realized in this lifetime, hopefully in this lifetime, we can feel that oneness with all of life, which is really exemplified in the reading where Master says, "Can't you feel the plant is alive?" It's an amazing non-attachment, if you think about it. That's the fulfillment of to be truly non-attached, is that he could identify with the plant life as being one with his life. And he can therefore identify with your life and your karma, be completely empathetic. I know that's a watchword these days, or a hashtag is hashtag empath, hashtag intuitive self-love, compassion, understanding, wisdom. And that's really how we do it, is we have to let go of this ego in order to really care on the deepest level about other people. Patience, as it was said, is the shortest route to God. And in this practice of self-realization, we need to be patient with ourselves. And sometimes our intentions don't measure up. Sometimes, like my greenhouse, they don't become a deed, maybe for months. In the case of our spiritual life, maybe lifetimes of us putting off the inevitable act of throwing the stick into the fire. So one of the things that Master gave to us is this wonderful, wonderful sentence: God watches the heart. And I've been meditating on that for the last week, that even if our actions and our deeds fall short of our intentions, to not discount those intentions themselves. It's a very, very noble thing to have the desire, the intention to want to know God. There are a majority of people on this planet that's never even occurred to them in this lifetime, to want to know God or to even be a better person. So many of us and so many of our moments are kind of on automatic co-pilot, however you would say it. So I did want to read a little bit of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna describes, there's room for all of us in this practice. Just some context, Arjuna is asking him what's the best way to find God. And he does say that bhakti yoga is the easiest path because it leverages our human love and then just takes it to the next octave to having that personal relationship with God. And so I will read this, and I will decide where to begin reading it here. Immerse your consciousness in me alone. Direct all your discrimination toward finding me. Beyond any doubt, then you shall come to me. O Arjuna, if you cannot absorb your thoughts in the contemplation of me, then practice the techniques of yoga, intended to help develop concentration. So that would be our daily practice of meditation, where we, at the easiest of times, in a closed room, seated on a cushion with little noise around, with our eyes closed, where we can actually, when the conditions are best, we practice this absorption. However, if you find yoga practice too difficult, then perform every action in the thought of me. By this means, too, you shall achieve final success. That's for us restless karma yogis out there. If you find that after 30 minutes you can't stay on your cushion anymore, then not dedicate, but while you're acting, think of God in every action. You won't be, if you're not thinking about yourself, and if you can string enough of those moments along, you are living in a freed state, even if you fall from it. That's what Jivan Mukta means, is one who's perfected, who has a continuous thread, like a mala bead, of moments of awareness of God. But if even while active you can't think of me, then give me your intentions. Ever striving to discipline your mind, offer to me the fruits of your every labor. And so that would be at the beginning of every and ending of every day, or of every significant moment in your day. Develop that practice of prayer, of talking to God. Perhaps when you're driving down the freeway, you forget God completely. But maybe when you park, maybe you can develop a ritual where you say, thank you, God, for getting me to my destination safely and with little strife. Or before you get in the car, the same thing. Before you go to bed, before you eat, saturate your day with these moments of perhaps not God communion, but God relation, God dialogue. How much time do we have? And so yes, God watches the heart, and sometimes our deeds do not measure up with our intentions, but that's not really the point. With patience and with dedication, and really with self-compassion, that's where it starts, in our own mind. We have a presenter who we just celebrated her first book release. Her name's Shar Sundust here at East West. And I was thumbing through her book. It was a book of poetry, and she had this one that was dedicated to her teacher. And it said, thank you for giving me the practice of speaking to myself in all. And that really stuck in my head as you could either say speaking to God in all, seeing the Guru in all, seeing yourself in all. But really, that's how we practice the subtle laws of the scriptures, is to realize that all of these outward behaviors have an inner reality that they stem from. So I want to read this wonderful prayer from Whispers from Eternity, which I think says it all. And then at the offertory, when you have your opportunity to make your donation, I'm going to be performing one of Swami's, my favorite one of Swami's songs, God's Call Within. This is Whispers 2:12. With the torch of our devotion, blaze away our dark indifference. Divine Mother, let every slap of correction administered by thee wring from us, thy children, only cries for thy love. Change any moans of suffering we utter into unceasing wails to be lifted comfortingly unto thy cosmic lap. O Divine Mother, teach us, even when we are bludgeoned by pain, to sing only thy exulting songs of joy. Melt our pride in thy purifying furnace of all necessary trials, to transmute the lead of unseemly arrogance into the pure gold of humility. Divine Mother, clear out the brooding slum of our selfishness, wherein crouch, huddled in pain, the starving, ill-clad urchins of our ignorance. Build there instead thy temple of omnipresence, wherein noble votaries of devotion, solemn reverence, and aspiring love can worship thee with pure hearts, dressed in the simple, clean garments of single-minded intention. In that golden temple, softly echoing thy whispered inner guidance, thy devotees will offer before thy altar the frankincense of unceasing remembrance as they sing to thee their soul chants. O Divine Mother, we lay eagerly at thy feet all the fresh-cut flowers of our devotion. Our humble prayer to thee is this: convert the little altar of our united hearts into the blazing light of thy omnipresence. Divine Mother, be thou the only love of our souls. Ignite our damp wood of earthliness with the flame of infinity. Let the torch of our own devotion blaze in the dark forest of our indifference, restlessness, and ignorance. Inflame our minds with thy thoughts, our hearts with thy love, our souls with thy eternal joy. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.